Americans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Rubio.
Thank you. At the outset, I want to thank you all as well for recognizing what happened this morning in my home, or last night in my home state of Florida. It's a reminder that the dangers our servicemen and women face isn't just when they're deployed, but it's inherently dangerous work even in their training. And so our thoughts and prayers go out to them and to their families and loved ones. Secretary Carter, I wanted to begin by asking you about Iran. Iran's goal is to become the most dominant regional power. Is that accurate?
I'm sorry, Iran's
goal is to become the regional hegemonic
probably
power.
true, yes.
And in that realm, they see American military presence in the region as a threat or an impediment to that goal, correct?
Probably to the achievement of some of their goals, yes.
And certainly, they're never excited to see additional American troops present anywhere in the Middle East. That's a fair statement.
I can't tell what excites them. I can't imagine that our bombing ISIL is unwelcome to them, but I don't know that because I don't know what they're thinking.
Well, bombing ISIL is unwelcome to them. General Dempsey, you agree the Iranians are not fans of U.S. military presence in the Middle East?
I think they have the same suspicion about us as that we have of them.
But in general, they're not, when they see us in the region, they're not necessarily fans of U.S. military deployments anywhere in the Middle East.
No, I wouldn't think so.
Okay. Well, that's why I want to turn to you, Secretary Kerry. I believe that much of our strategy with regards to ISIS is being driven by a desire not to upset Iran so that they don't walk away from the negotiating table on the deal that you're working on. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Because the facts completely contradict that. But I'm not at liberty to discuss all of them here for a lot of different reasons. In classified session I could, but at this delicate stage of the negotiations, I'm not sure that's advisable.
So are you...
Fact is, let me just...
Well, but for the record, can you state that Iran's feelings about our military presence in the region and the fact that they would be upset if we increase military personnel on the ground
Senator,
or
let me
increase targeting, for example, of Assad in Syria, could you tell me today that under no circumstances is how Iran would react to an increase of U.S. military action against ISIS? Because as we heard from Secretary Carter, they are not fans of us bombing ISIS because it involves our presence in the region. Are you telling me that that is a non-factor in terms of how it would impact the negotiations? Or is that something you can't discuss in this setting?
No, they would welcome our bombing additionally ISIS, actually. They want us to destroy ISIS. They want to destroy ISIS. ISIS is a threat to them. It's a threat to the region. And I think you're misreading it if you think that there isn't a mutual interest with respect to Daesh between every country in the region.
So they're supportive of more ground. If the U.S. sent more military personnel into Iraq as trainers, advisors, logistical support, they would support that? Iran would support that?
Well, they're not going to come out and openly support it, and they obviously would be nervous about it, but they're not going to object if that's what it is. But the point is, you have bigger problems than that with that particular scenario because the Shia militia within Iraq might have something to say about it. Muqtada al-Sadr, Hadi al-Amri, other people might obviously react very adversely to that. But what's important, Senator, with respect to your question is to understand this. And I think this has been a misread by a lot of people up here on the Hill, to be honest with you. There is no grand bargain being discussed here in the context of this negotiation. This is about a nuclear weapon potential. That's it. And the President has made it absolutely clear they will not get a nuclear weapon. Now, the presumption by a lot of people up on the Hill here has been that we somehow aren't aware of that goal, even as we negotiate that goal. Our negotiation is calculated to make sure they can't get a nuclear weapon. And it's really almost insulting that the presumption here is that we're going to negotiate something that allows them to get a nuclear weapon.
Well, I haven't discussed about the nuclear weapon, but I've discussed, and I'm not saying there's a grand bargain. What I'm saying is that I believe that our military strategy towards ISIS is influenced by our desire not to cross red lines that the Iranians have about U.S. military presence in the region.
Absolutely not in the least.
Okay.
There's no consideration whatsoever as to how they or anybody else, we will do what is necessary in conjunction with our coalition. Remember, we have 62 countries, including
well, I want to talk about the coalition.
5 Sunni countries that for the first time ever are engaged in military action in another country in the region.
Well, and that's why I want to touch on that point, because General Dempsey a moment ago outlined the need to have a broad coalition that I imagine involves these Sunni countries, for example, the Jordanians, the Saudis, the UAE, and others. These are also countries, by the way, that are deeply concerned about Iran. And they feel, is it not right that they feel that we've kept them in the dark about our negotiations with Iran. In essence, the way we've proceeded with our negotiations in Iran have impacted our trust level with these critical allies in this coalition. Is that
Senator,
accurate?
that actually is flat wrong, also. Flat wrong.
They said so publicly.
It's flat wrong. I just came back from a meeting in the Gulf, in Riyadh. I met with King Salman, who completely supported what we're doing. I met with all of the GCC members. They all sat around a table, and they all articulated their support for what we're doing, and they believe we are better off trying to prevent them from getting a bomb diplomatically first, providing, of course, that it actually prevents them from getting that bomb. That's the test of this. And a whole bunch of people are trying to give this a grade before the test has even been taken.
So you're saying here today that our allies in the region, our Sunni allies, the Saudis, the UAE, the Egyptians, and others, are perfectly comfortable with where the negotiations stand at this moment?
I did not say that. They are not perfectly comfortable. They're nervous. They're apprehensive. Of course they are. They want to make sure that, in fact, just as members of Congress want to make sure that the deal that is struck, if one can be struck now, will in fact prevent them from getting a weapon.
Have you shared with them the details of where it stands right now?
We've shared considerable details with them, absolutely.
And are they apprehensive about that, or are they comfortable with what you shared with them?
They're comfortable with what we shared with them, and Saud al-Faisal, the senior foreign minister in the world, I might add, publicly sat with me at a press conference in which he articulated their support for what we're doing.
Okay, General Dempsey, I want to ask you, because we talked about this a moment ago, part of what's happening here is a second concentric circle that ISIS is pursuing beyond its core in Syria and Iraq, and that we've seen that emerge in Libya. We're starting to see signs of it emerge in Afghanistan. First, if you can comment about what ISIS, or any of you could comment about what we're seeing with ISIS with regards to the competition between them and al-Qaeda and the Taliban to absorb groups in Afghanistan. And second, how does this AUMF that's proposed before us today allow us to form a strategy that allows us to deal with that second ring of threats of ISIS absorbing other groups in the region?
The TTP is notably that splinter group of the Taliban who has rebranded themselves to the ISIL ideology. And to answer your question on the AUMF would give me the authority to make recommendations to the Commander-in-Chief how to deal with ISIL wherever it shows up if the two conditions that the SecDef mentioned exist. Number one, that they have affiliated themselves with the ideology, but number two, that they demonstrate an intent to threaten U.S. interests either regionally or globally.
And just my last point here. In Afghanistan, we still have a significant presence of servicemen and women, among other Americans, much more so than in other parts of the world where they're now getting groups to align themselves. The growth of an ISIS affiliate and or pledged group in Afghanistan could potentially pose a significant threat to American personnel in Afghanistan, potentially.
It will initially pose a threat to the government of Afghanistan and could, over time, pose a threat to us.
Okay, Senator.